Don't forget to like and subscribe. I've been dating my girlfriend for 3 years now. Let's call her Emily. Our story began on social media, where I innocently commented on one of her Instagram stories. From there, our conversation blossomed, and before I knew it, I had her phone number, Snapchat, and we were texting each other nonstop. About a week later, we met in person for the first time, and things quickly became more serious. It felt perfect. Everything was falling into place just as the holiday season was winding down. When Valentine's Day was just around the corner, I thought, well, at least I won't be alone this year, as I had already been spending quality time with Emily. But things took a turn I never expected. As Valentine's Day approached, Emily revealed something that sent chills down my spine. She had been dealing with a stalker for months. His name was Alex, a guy a few years older than her, and they'd met in college through a group project. At first, it seemed harmless, a guy from class trying to make a connection. But then it escalated. Alex began showing up unexpectedly around campus, following her from class to class, and sending her dozens of texts, which she had ignored for the most part. She never involved the police, thinking it was just a phase. But when the situation started to feel more menacing, Emily finally opened up about it to me. He had found out where she lived, started sending her creepy messages, and even left a box of chocolates on her doorstep, accompanied by a text that read, "I hope you like the gift I left for you." This was when she had had enough and decided to confront him. In a long message, Emily told Alex that she was seeing someone now and that he needed help. She asked him to stop contacting her, but there was still one thing that left her terrified. How had he gotten her address? She feared that he had followed her home one day. I assured her that I wouldn't let anything happen to her, and I meant it. A few days later, Emily sent me a screenshot of a text from a strange number. The message asked if the guy she was seeing was me, and to my horror, it used my full name. I didn't know what to think at first, but I was starting to feel like I was now a part of this nightmare. Alex wasn't just harassing Emily, he was now involving me, and that made everything even more unsettling. We were both freaked out, and she was seriously considering going to the police if this behavior didn't stop. I told her that I would go with her to file a report if Alex contacted her one more time. I knew things were about to get serious. Then came Valentine's Day. This year, it fell on a Friday. Emily and I had made plans to go out for dinner at a nice seafood restaurant by the beach, enjoying the fresh air as we sat at a table overlooking the water. Everything was perfect until we noticed a man sitting on a bench just outside the dining area. He had his hat pulled low, almost as if he were trying to hide his face. Emily made a joke saying, "What if that's Alex?" We laughed it off, but then something odd happened. The man slightly tilted his head in our direction, and when our eyes met, he quickly looked away and got up. He walked off, but we were both now on edge. It was a strange feeling, and we couldn't shake the thought that it could have been him. But we tried to move on, pushing the anxiety aside as we continued with our meal. After dinner, we weren't ready to call it a night. It was Valentine's Day, after all. Emily's parents weren't home, and I had the place to myself, so we decided to go back to my rental house. We settled on the couch, and things started to get more intimate. But then, Emily suddenly pulled away from me. "What was that?" she whispered. I had heard it too, a strange noise coming from outside in the backyard. I quickly got up and asked, "Do you want me to go check?" Emily nodded, her face showing concern. I grabbed my slides and walked through the house, heading toward the backyard. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe an animal had knocked something over, but when I stepped outside, I was met with an eerie silence. Everything seemed calm until I saw it. The stack of beach chairs that had been leaning against the house had been knocked over. It didn't make sense. There hadn't been a breeze that night, so how could they have fallen? I continued to scan the yard, and then something caught my eye. A tall figure was partially hidden in the bushes. My heart skipped a beat. I moved closer, squinting, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It wasn't an animal. Someone was standing there, staring back at me. In an instant, I knew I had to act. I took a few more steps forward, and that's when the figure moved, quickly emerging from the bushes. It looked like he was about to charge at me. My instincts kicked in, and I lunged at him, tackling him to the ground before he could get close. He struggled, but I held him down with all my strength, yelling for Emily to come outside. When Emily appeared on the porch, I shouted, "Call the police!" She ran to grab her phone as the man continued to squirm beneath me. I wasn't letting him go. In that moment, I realized with dread that it was him, the guy from earlier at the restaurant. He was wearing the same shirt, the same hat. I'd had my suspicions, but now it was clear. Alex had followed us. I was furious, and I didn't know what to expect next. The police arrived quickly, and they cuffed him without any resistance. As they read him his rights, Emily showed the officers the hundreds of harassing messages she had received from him. The situation had gone from creepy to dangerous in a matter of weeks. As a result, Alex was arrested for trespassing, and Emily pressed charges for stalking and harassment. He ended up paying a fine and receiving a misdemeanor, which was a small consolation for the distress he had caused. In addition, Emily filed for a restraining order, ensuring that if Alex contacted her again, he would be arrested on the spot. Now, things have returned to normal, but the experience was a harsh reminder of how far someone can go when their obsession turns into a dangerous fixation. While we are both relieved that he hasn't contacted Emily since, I can't shake the feeling of unease. Alex may have been clever enough to back off, but we will never forget the fear we felt that night. I will always be grateful that we were able to handle the situation together, and that Emily's safety is now guaranteed. 4 years ago, on Valentine's Day, something completely unexpected happened to my boyfriend and me, an experience that stayed with us ever since. At the time, I was 22, and we had planned a simple, cute dinner, like most couples do. What was supposed to be a romantic and calm evening quickly turned into a terrifying nightmare. We arrived at the restaurant, and as we walked in, we noticed a couple outside who seemed to be staring at us. It was strange, but I assumed it was just my imagination. I nudged my boyfriend lightly, and we continued inside. Once inside, my boyfriend went up to the host to give his name for the waiting list. The restaurant was busy, so they told us it would be about a 45-minute wait. Deciding to kill time, he suggested we head over to the mini golf place across the street. As we walked back to his car, something even stranger happened. The woman from the couple who had been watching us stood up and approached us. She introduced herself as Mrs. Silva, and I immediately noticed how odd her behavior was. She extended her hand to my boyfriend, and though he was a bit surprised, he shook her hand. She then began talking about how she thought we made an amazing couple and how, as a photographer, she thought we'd be perfect for a photo shoot. She invited us to follow her to her studio, claiming that the wait would be long and we could use the time for a photo session. I felt uncomfortable, but I tried to be polite and politely declined. She insisted, saying that she didn't have any business cards but that her studio was only 5 minutes away and she could drive us there. At this point, I was really getting a bad feeling, so my boyfriend politely said we had other plans. The woman's expression quickly turned strange, and she just smiled, sitting back down at her table while her husband remained silent. We left the situation, trying to laugh it off to ease the tension, but honestly, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. We arrived at the mini golf place, and to our surprise, the place was practically empty. We laughed at the oddness of it all, but deep down, I was still bothered by that interaction. As we played our 5th round, I heard the entrance bell ring. I turned around and my heart stopped. It was the same woman, Mrs. Silva, and her husband. They were here again watching us. When she saw me, she gave me a creepy smile, and I immediately told my boyfriend. He turned to look and saw them standing there. She made an unsettling comment, saying, "It's funny how we keep running into you too." That's when the husband said, "We should take a photo of you too, Silva versus Rodriguez." My boyfriend, whose last name is Rodriguez, looked immediately uncomfortable. We politely declined again and said we had to go. The smiles faded from their faces as we quickly left. It was then that I suggested we should call it a night and head back to his place, since it was closer than mine, and my parents wouldn't be home until the following morning. But my boyfriend insisted we should go ahead with dinner and not let a weird couple ruin our night. After waiting for 15 minutes in the car, we finally got the text from the restaurant saying our table was ready. We had a pleasant dinner, with my boyfriend insisting on paying for it since it was Valentine's Day. Usually we split the bill, but while he was in the bathroom, I swore I saw the woman peeking around a corner. I tried to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but I couldn't ignore the unease creeping in. After dinner, we drove to his place. To get there, we had to take a long road surrounded by trees, which made me feel even more anxious. About 3 to 5 minutes into that road, we heard a loud pop, and my boyfriend immediately stopped the car. The 2 front tires had popped. He quickly realized what was happening, ran to the car, and said, "Get out, now, we don't have much time before they get here." He turned off the engine, turned off the lights, and locked the doors. I was terrified, not knowing what was going on. He grabbed me and pulled me into the woods, telling me to stay quiet. He quickly called the police, explaining where we were and what was happening. The operator told him to stay on the line, that the cops would be there soon, but he said we couldn't wait. We hid behind trees and bushes while we waited. Then we heard a car engine coming closer. My boyfriend told me to lie flat, and he did the same. The car stopped nearby, and then I heard the familiar voice of Mrs. Silva. She yelled out, "Damn, we took too long." We heard a car door slam, and then the car sped away. We stayed low until the police arrived, which was about 2 minutes later. We explained everything to the officers, and they told us we would be contacted if anything came up. We never heard anything further about the situation. We called my sister to pick us up, and my boyfriend called a tow truck for his car. For years later, we still have no idea who that couple was or what they wanted. We never figured out their real intentions. But despite that terrifying experience, we're now married and have a crazy story to tell our kids, how we went from being a couple with a strange encounter to becoming a family. It's a memory that stays with us forever, a reminder of how the love between us outlasted the fear of the unknown. It was the spring of 2021, and I had enrolled in online courses at a prestigious university. Even though I planned to transfer to my hometown university for the summer semester, I still wanted to make some new friends in the meantime. I didn't want to feel isolated while navigating virtual classes. So, one night I decided to give Tinder a try. After a few swipes, I matched with a girl named Emma. She had a great sense of humor, and we clicked instantly over our shared love for movies and travel. We made plans to meet up, and after our first date, things just fell into place. We quickly became inseparable, and before I knew it, we were officially a couple. Emma wasn't from my hometown, so I knew being away from her family and friends could be tough on her. After spring break, I noticed her behavior had changed. She'd always been sarcastic, but now her teasing had become sharper, more biting. The playful banter we used to have had taken a darker turn, and I started feeling uncomfortable. I tried not to overthink it, assuming she was just stressed with upcoming exams. I brushed it off, but when she left to go back home for the summer break, I noticed how strange things had gotten between us. Despite the tension, we kept in touch, texting and FaceTiming frequently. Once the summer semester began, I moved into an apartment near campus. The dorms weren't for me, so I found a cozy place with an affordable rent. The first day of classes went by without much event, but that night, Emma and I decided to break up. She had been struggling with homesickness. Being so far from her family, friends, and pets was taking a toll on her, and she didn't know anyone in town besides me and her roommate, whom she didn't get along with. Emma was a shy person, and it seemed like she needed some space to recharge. I didn't want to be the one to end the relationship, but it was one of those situations where it just felt like the right decision. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't exactly painful either, and I felt a sense of relief afterward. A couple of weeks passed, and slowly I began to feel better. When I thought back to the relationship, I realized there were a lot of issues I had ignored. As Valentine's Day approached, I couldn't help but feel a bit down. I had planned some nice surprises for Emma, romantic gestures I had been excited about, but now I wasn't sure what to do with them. In an attempt to distract myself, I reactivated my Tinder account. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but it felt like the easiest way to meet someone new and avoid spending the holiday alone. Most of my friends were already in relationships, and I didn't want to be the only one left out. After a couple of days, I had some matches, and one of them stood out. Her name was Lily. She wasn't into the typical Valentine's Day scene, like going to crowded bars. Instead, she preferred a quiet night in with a movie, which was exactly what I wanted. We hit it off right away, and after talking for a while, I asked her if she'd like to hang out on Valentine's Day. She said yes, and I was excited to see where things would go. The night of Valentine's Day 2021, Lily and I grabbed some fast food, went to the movies, and then walked around downtown, enjoying the spring weather. We ended up back at my apartment, and after a while, things became more intimate. Lily asked if she could stay the night since it was getting late and she didn't want to make the walk home. I was happy to have her stay, so we went to bed around 1 a.m. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to find Lily getting out of bed. She didn't say anything as she walked toward the bathroom, so I went back to sleep. But when I woke up again around 5:30 a.m., I noticed she wasn't in bed next to me. The bathroom light was off, and her clothes were still on the floor. It didn't alarm me at first, but when I got up to check, I heard a creak from the corner of the room. I looked over, and there she was, standing completely still in the far corner, her back to me. I called her name, but there was no response. I turned on the bedside lamp, which barely lit the room, and got up to check on her. I gently touched her shoulder and called her name again. Suddenly, she spun around with alarming speed, and her face was blank, no emotion, just pure intensity. Before I could react, she started screaming and hitting me. The blows weren't hard, but I wasn't exactly built for confrontation, and it stung. I stumbled back, falling onto the bed, but she continued to chase me, her face still vacant. After about 30 seconds, she grabbed her clothes and bolted out of the apartment, leaving me frozen with shock. I quickly ran to the front door, which was wide open, and locked it. Then, I noticed a horrible smell coming from the bathroom. I opened the door, and the stench hit me immediately. The bathroom was in chaos. Shower curtain ripped off, my toiletries scattered on the floor, and a wet floor. The worst part was that she had defecated and smeared it across the mirror. I immediately called the police. When they arrived, they took my report and asked for her Tinder and Snapchat profiles, but both had been deleted. The only thing I had left was a picture she sent me, which I had saved. The police couldn't do much beyond taking the report, but they advised me to stay alert, just in case she returned. I called my best friend, Jason, who came over to stay with me that night. As we were settling in to watch a movie, I heard someone trying to open the front door. It was a faint noise, but it was unmistakable. I waited a minute to see if it would stop, and eventually it did. I peered through the peephole, but no one was there. I didn't feel safe for the rest of the night, and even now, a part of me is still shaken by what happened. The strange part is that I never heard from Lily again, and though the police kept an eye out for her, nothing else unusual occurred. But every once in a while, I can't shake the feeling that she's still out there, and I'm left wondering who she really was and what could have caused her to act like that. Reason.